Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host, and we are going to continue with our coverage of the war in the Gulf, Israel's war on Iran, along with the United States, its global implication as it unfolds. And today we are very fortunate to have with us a very distinguished diplomat. I think he's my favorite diplomat in the entire world, Ambassador Talmiz Ahmad, for whom this is the backyard. I mean, he was the ambassador to Oman, to United Arab Emirates, to Saudi Arabia. He was also additional secretary in the ministry, taking care of oil and natural gas. So all of this is right in your ballpark, sir. So, sir, welcome to Khanversations.
Thank you very much.
Well, I want to turn a little bit towards New Delhi and talk about Prime Minister Modi's visit to Israel at this time. He's the only Indian Prime Minister who has visited Israel repeatedly. There has been so much talk. I mean, I've been listening to Dr. Jaishankar for now 3-4 years, and all he talks about is strategic autonomy and multi-alignment. Is this the end of India's multi-alignment? Has India now become essentially a cheerleader of Israel? I mean, the manner in which Prime Minister Modi said that with full conviction, I tell you that I stand with Israel. So what does he mean? And I found his speech there quite troubling. Like, for example, one of the highlights of his speech was this focus on terrorism. And he was giving the speech on the 25th of February. And 25th of February was the 34th anniversary of Baruch Goldstein going into a mosque and killing 29 Palestinian worshippers and injuring 125. It was a massive terrorist attack. Prime Minister Modi, his memory does not remember that particular attack while he talks about terrorism, but not a single word of sympathy or empathy for the civilians who died in Gaza. So what is happening? Is this a significant shift in India's foreign policy? And there's also another question. Actually, I saw even Suhasini Haidar of The Hindu was raising this question about did Netanyahu confide with Modi even before his visit that the US and Israel were planning to attack Iran, no matter how the dialogue went? And is Modi on board with this attack on Iran?
I want to answer you as well as I can. 2 points straight away. Number one, I am personally satisfied that Prime Minister Modi and the government of India were kept well informed about the initiation of hostilities against Iran. All of us in India were very bewildered by the timing of the visit. Wednesday and Thursday, just when discussions were going on in Geneva, and there was a threat from the White House that if those discussions didn't go well, war could begin on Thursday itself. The fact that there was a 2-day visit encompassing both Wednesday and Thursday suggests that there was that our side, the Indian side, had been informed that there will be nothing for you to worry. You can come and go, and the hostilities will be a little later. Indeed, they started from a day after. Friday was a cooling off period, and it began from Saturday. I'm completely convinced that they were in the know. Otherwise, it makes no sense whatsoever for the Prime Minister of such a major country should be going across into the war zone and be trapped. In fact, even as I'm speaking to you, some members of his entourage, particularly the media, who had stayed back, are trapped. They can't come home. Some are in Israel, and some of them are trapped in the UAE, coming back. Now, the other part, what was, so in terms of timing, we are very clear about that. In terms of the content, what was it that encouraged the Prime Minister? I would suggest that you take a look at what has been happening in the last few months in terms of India's foreign policy. India has found itself seriously disadvantaged by the what we see as American hostility. The United States imposed those tariffs upon us and pulled out of the hat these tariffs relating to Russia, so that India had the highest tariffs in the world. A
Yeah.
country that was otherwise viewed as a very close friend and strategic partner. Overnight, everything that we had built together over the last 25 years was put into the dustbin, and we were crippled with sanctions. The sanctions were not only wounding economically, they were very distressing for our leaders because we have worked so hard to build this kind of relationship. The second thing that was again an embarrassment for the Indian side was the behavior of the American president in the background of Operation Sindoor, publicly insisting that the prime minister acknowledge the significant diplomatic role that the president had played in bringing peace between India and Pakistan, and constantly referring to the number of hits that the Pakistanis had claimed they had inflicted upon India, claiming that he had stopped a nuclear war, prevented millions of people from being killed. All of this rubbish, which had been conveyed to him from the Pakistani side, was extremely distressing as far as India is concerned. To top it all, the president thought it fit to sit with the field marshal of Pakistan and have lunch with him in the White House. This did not indicate that this was a relationship that we had cultivated in good faith over a very long time. The third, then of course, we had the scenario relating to Bangladesh. There again, our regional diplomacy was seeing a certain setback. Pakistan had moved in very rapidly and was building its own relationship over there. And in this background, we then felt the desperate desire to reach out to the United States, to rebuild the relationship. But sadly, it would appear that when you go to rebuild a relationship on terms that are acceptable to the other side because they have bullied you, they have pressurized you into an unacceptable situation, you come up with a deal that is unsatisfactory. And that is the view in India, that the FTA that was finally negotiated with the American side was very seriously one-sided to the American advantage and could pose serious difficulties in India. There are people who praise the agreement. I am not an authority on it. But the fact is that once the American Supreme Court said that those tariffs were illegal and were outside the authority of the president, India was among the first countries to walk off, to convey that that FTA no longer operated, which means that it had elements which we had felt pressurized into accepting. And this now comes the engagement with Israel. Obviously, we were familiar with what is happening. We had seen the war clouds. We had seen the massive build-up. My explanation is, and I say it with a very heavy heart, possibly India felt that this is a golden opportunity to build up a security partnership, which is important and which I will explain in a minute, but simultaneously please the Americans as well. That means the visit became a factor in appeasing the Americans. And this, I believe, is completely unacceptable. It is not the right thing to do. This is India's national interest, crucial interest, should not be and cannot be sacrificed only because of a certain expediency that you face in a moment. Now, what was the security compulsion? Because this is, I can argue both ways on that. The security compulsion was that the situation in the Gulf was getting was deteriorating to India's disadvantage. Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan seemed to be building up an alignment. And Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan were seen as building an alignment in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. Two alignments, both involving Pakistan, both which had Turkey in one case, Turkey also hostile to India separately. India, the Prime Minister possibly was persuaded to accept the fact that this would be the right time to proclaim our strategic affinity with Israel to the exclusion of other relationships in the region. That is a triumvirate of Israel, United Arab Emirates, and India was upheld by this visit. Now, you can have it both ways. I am personally unhappy about it. I believe that this is expedient, but this is not the way diplomacy should be conducted. If there is a power, however strong it might be, the United States, that bullies India, there is no way India should bow before that monster. We should have upheld our interests, convey to the parties concerned that these are not in our national interest. Going along with the diktat of a bully only opens you to further pressure. And I fear that is what is likely to happen in coming months.
So this question is a little academic, uh, Ambassador Saab. So, for example, if you look at the region now, one of the most significant things I think has happened from the geopolitical perspective in the Middle East or West Asia, as it's referred to in India, is the Saudi outreach to Pakistan and talking about a defense agreement between the two of them. I really don't understand how it's operating. Is Saudi Arabia now going to be defending Pakistan or helping Pakistan in its war with Afghanistan or not? Or is it just limited to Pakistan helping Saudi Arabia if Saudi Arabia is attacked by Iran or Israel and otherwise? But by reaching out to Pakistan and bringing Pakistan into the geostrategic conversation of the Gulf, and then its resultant is that India now is pushing for this new quad that they are talking about with Israel, United Arab Emirates, and also perhaps Greece to counter Turkey. So is it appearing as if that the Middle East and the chaos of the Middle East is expanding to now include the geopolitical conflicts of South Asia also? So it's like South Asia is becoming part of the greater Middle East. Do you see it that way?
I would have counseled patience here. When you have a massive churn,
Yeah.
diplomatic churn, political churn, that is not the time to make major moves. It's a time to watch the situation carefully to see if it can be molded to your advantage. When the Saudis reached out to Pakistan, I said very strongly, including on your program, that this is a knee-jerk reaction from the kingdom. They always turn to Pakistan when they have a security problem, and Pakistan is their go-to country in this regard. India, the relationship is very long term and very substantial, involves energy, trade, investments, joint ventures, presence of the community, logistical connectivity, what have you. With Pakistan, it is security. So, in a period where after the Doha attack, the kingdom felt very insecure, they turned to Pakistan. I repeatedly stated then that this had no implications whatsoever for India. There was no way in which the kingdom was going to stand shoulder to shoulder with Pakistan against India. This was entirely connected with the anxieties that were agitating the kingdom at that time. And this should have been understood. I have a feeling, and this is a feeling as of now, Turkey also attempted to intervene to become part of this duopoly and make it a triumvirate. Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan. Reading this, certain elements in the Indian establishment and possibly their brethren in the American establishment or the Israeli establishment would have attempted to convey to the powers that be in Delhi that this is a ganging up of Islamic states against India. And that is why this is a golden opportunity for India to affirm its ties with Israel and the UAE, which is already, you remember that
Yeah.
UAE and Saudi Arabia also had become estranged from each other, partly because of the proximity of the UAE to Israel
Yes.
and the dramatic movement of Israel into Somaliland, very far from Eilat, into Somaliland, which made Israel a major player in West Asian in the Western Indian Ocean and threatens the security of Saudi Arabia as well as Egypt and to some extent Turkey because Turkey has very close ties with Somalia. So this scenario we should have had a certain degree of caution and circumspection. Abandoning that and acting under pressure, India moved quickly to proclaim what the Prime Minister did. This this crude divide between that there is only one threat, and that is the threat from Islamic elements, though they are not named, but that's very obvious in the speech, completely ignoring the scenario relating to state terror.
Mhm.
Why is there a warrant for the arrest of Prime Minister Netanyahu? Because he is recognized as genocidal. This is terrorism at its this is called state terrorism. And that is where India should have its counsel, waited for the scenario to clarify, and not rushed the way we did. I think that this is something which was extremely ill advised and ill timed.
Ambassador Saab, this is my last question to you. From your perspective, if you were to design a foreign policy for India in the Gulf and in the Middle East, what would be the 2 or 3 priorities that you would recommend that India pursue in its engagement with the Middle East?
The main point is that the Middle East is deeply divided, extremely turbulent and chaotic, and frequently conflictual. This harms India's crucial national interest, our energy interests, our economic interests, as well as the welfare of our community. We have 10 million people who live in that
Yeah.
region. The last thing India can accommodate or tolerate is an unstable and warlike situation. Earlier, there was this deep divide between the Gulf countries and Iran, and they came to blows, nearly came to blows, until the Gulf countries realized that the United States is not a source of security in the region. The Americans promoted normalization of ties between certain Arab countries and Israel without paying any attention to the Palestinians. My effort would be as follows. I would like to work over a period of time for a comprehensive security arrangement in West Asia. I'm not the first person to say this. Great scholars have applied their mind. Some of them have borrowed ideas from the Peace of Westphalia and have attempted to
Mhm.
see how those could be applied in West Asia. I am a votary of that. I've written a follow up paper suggesting that this is where we should go. Let us start slow, bringing certain countries together. I'm not saying you have to be absolutely chums, but you belong in the same region. You have to understand each other's interests and you have to accommodate them. The kind of glib talk you hear from Washington and Tel Aviv that Iran is the greatest sponsor of terror. I would say to you, the greatest sponsor of terror is Israel, and the greatest perpetrator of terror is the United States in terms of the violence they inflict upon the region. So I would like to see a process where these countries start talking to each other and through dialogue start promote understanding. I'm not saying this need be a process initiated entirely by India on its own. There are a very large number of Asian countries which would be very good at playing such a constructive role. And they would be Malaysia or Indonesia, Vietnam, etc. Countries that have a very crucial stake in the stability of the region. I would give that a priority, but that is a medium to long term project. In the short term, we must, I know that the Israelis are totally immune to any suggestion about accommodating Palestinian interests. But today we will have to speak up and we will have to build a coalition because I fear that where the Israelis are going and with American support is depopulation. It's very likely that you could be seeing after the war with Iran. I asked this question that if the Hamas is disarmed, who will fight for Palestine? Will it not? Therefore, the Americans will put at the top of their agenda the removal of the 2 million people from Gaza into the Sinai and the removal of 3.5 million people in the West Bank into Jordan. I fear this very seriously. And that is where we must immediately talk about mobilizing international opinion. We will now, second, we will now have very serious problems between Iran and the Gulf countries. They will need the healing touch. The Gulf countries have seen their vulnerabilities exposed. The Iranians will be smarting under the fact that they have been, for no rhyme or reason, attacked and very severely crippled, and their supreme leader assassinated. This will also require major diplomatic effort. So I would say to you, medium to long term, Middle East peace process, a peace process for a comprehensive security arrangement. In the immediate, raising the consciousness relating to Palestine. Don't allow it to be rubbished and ignored as the Israelis and the Americans would want. Secondly, play a role in mending the ties between the Gulf countries and Iran through economic cooperation, logistical connectivity, what have you. At some stage, Israel may have a change of government and a change of heart. If they do that and they show a constructive approach to the Palestinian issue, they could be welcomed into West Asia and made constructive players in West Asia.
Master Saab, thank you very much for such thoughtful commentary, and I really appreciate the fact that you took so much time and spoke so candidly. And I'm sure that the listeners of Khanversations continue to benefit. You are one of their most popular and beloved guests. So thank you very much for joining Khanversations.
Thank you very much, Khan sir. I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Did you see my piece on Indian Air Force in Frontline?
I have not yet. I've been traveling with.
Yeah, so I sent it to you.
I look out for that. No, I get Frontline. I get the hard copy.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's going to be. They've already published it on the website.
Okay, it's online. Then I look out for it.
Yeah, and it's
this one is on what? What is the topic?
The crisis of Indian Air Force, and I talk about how. I also talk a little bit about India's dependency on Israel. You know, I was very surprised when I looked at Tejas 1. India only makes the dabba. They just make the box. Everything else is imported. The jet engines are coming from the US, and all the electronics is coming from Israel. The missiles, the radars, the targeting systems. So it's just the chassis, as they say, you know, the body of the plane is made in India. And I was quite surprised at the lack of indigenousness of that aircraft. But anyway, so what I'm going to do with this is that I'm going to break it up into two parts. The first part with Iran and the second part with India, and publish them both separately. All right?
Okay, fine. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Master Saab, thank you very much for such thoughtful commentary, and I really appreciate the fact that you took so much time and spoke so candidly. And I'm sure that the listeners of Khanversations continue to benefit. You are one of their most popular and beloved guests. So thank you very much for joining Khanversations.